My name is Haley Morris. I'm 32 years old, and it took me almost my entire life to understand something most people learn far earlier, that the deepest wounds don't always come from shouting or fists or obvious cruelty. Sometimes they come from being quietly overlooked, from learning, slowly and painfully, that love in your own family can be conditional. My birth mother died when I was 10. I still remember the smell of disinfectant in the hospital hallway, the way my father's hand shook when he held mine. That was the first and last time I ever saw Richard Morris cry. After that day, something in him hardened. Not cruel, not cold, just absent. A year later, Clara entered our lives. She was polite, soft-spoken, always smiling when my father was around. The kind of woman who brought fruit plates to family gatherings and remembered everyone's favorite tea. But when it was just the two of us, the air changed. She never raised her voice at me, never laid a hand on me. She didn't have to. A look, a pause before responding, a carefully chosen silence. Those were enough to teach me my place. When I was 13, my half-sister Violet was born. I remember standing in the hospital room, watching my father cradle her like something sacred. His face lit up in a way I hadn't seen since my mother died. "She's a miracle," he said. "A gift from God to this family." I smiled. I even meant it. But somewhere inside me, something cracked, quietly, permanently. From that moment on, I became a background presence in my own home. Violet's birthdays were events. Balloons, themed cakes, relatives filling the living room with laughter. Mine, if they remembered, came with a distracted, "Oh, right," and maybe a text message later that night. At 17, I placed second in the state math competition. I brought the certificate home and left it on the kitchen table. No one said a word. 2 years later, Violet brought home a preschool participation award. They framed it. That was when I stopped trying to be seen. I learned early that survival in our house meant being useful, not visible, helpful, not demanding, quiet, always quiet. I told myself it was temporary, that one day when I grew up, when I succeeded, when I proved my worth, things would balance out. I didn't realize then that I was training myself to accept imbalance as normal. By the time I graduated college with honors and landed a stable job as a data technician in downtown Seattle, I had already internalized one rule. Don't expect fairness. Earn permission. I made just under $8,000 a month. Enough to save, enough to dream. My dream was simple: to move out, to own something that was mine, to finally stop feeling like a guest in my own life. To save money, I stayed in the same single-story house in Bellevue where I'd grown up. My old bedroom still had my graduation gown hanging in the closet, like a promise I'd never cashed in. I didn't pay rent, but I paid everything else. Utilities, internet, gas in the winter, appliance repairs. I sent Violet spending money every week, not because she asked, because I thought that was what a good older sister did. Because deep down, I still believed that being generous would eventually earn me a seat at the table. What I didn't know yet was that generosity, in my family, was never seen as kindness. It was seen as availability. And availability, once established, is very hard to take back. At the time, I was dating someone, Ethan, my boyfriend. He used to ask me why I never spoke up at home. I always told him the same thing. It's easier this way. I didn't realize I was confusing peace with silence, and that silence was about to cost me everything. I used to think being the reliable one was a compliment. In my family, it meant I was the one who didn't complain, the one who didn't need reminders, the one who would quietly fix things before they became problems. It started small, almost invisible. A few months after I began working full-time, Clara knocked on my bedroom door late one evening. She didn't come in, just leaned against the frame, arms folded loosely, voice gentle enough to sound apologetic. "Haley, sweetheart, Violet's school sent a notice. Her tuition deadline is tomorrow. We're a little short this month. Could you help us with $300 just until next paycheck?" $300 barely registered in my mind back then. I transferred it without hesitation. Didn't even ask when they'd pay it back. They never did. I told myself it didn't matter. A year later, my father called me into the garage. He stood beneath the flickering ceiling light, pointing at a water stain spreading across the beams. "Roof's leaking," he said. "The contractor needs $500 up front. I'll pay you back this weekend." I handed him $700, just in case. That weekend came and went. Still, I stayed quiet. Because every time I even thought about bringing it up, I could already hear Clara's voice in my head. Soft, amused, faintly disappointed. "You're keeping track? Over family things?" So I learned to let it go. Dinner after dinner, I watched money move through that house like it belonged to everyone except me. Repairs, groceries, school trips, birthday gifts, wedding magazines scattered across the coffee table years before Violet was even engaged. And every time something came up, the expectation hovered in the air unspoken. Haley will handle it. Not because I was asked, because I always had. Ethan noticed before I did. One night, after I covered a surprise repair bill for the dishwasher, he sat across from me on my bed, brows drawn together. "Do they ever pay you back?" he asked. I shrugged. "They're family." He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, like someone realizing a truth they didn't want to say out loud. By the time I turned 31, I had saved enough for a down payment on a condo near my office, Willow Creek, 10 minutes from work, sunlight in the kitchen, quiet. I finally told my dad over coffee one Sunday morning, showing him the floor plan on my laptop like it was something fragile. Instead of pride, his face tightened. "Why rush?" he said. "You're comfortable here. Prices are unstable." It wasn't concern. It was control. A month later, Clara knew exactly how much I'd saved. That was when I understood. Every small loan, every unreturned promise, they weren't accidents. They were rehearsals. And I had just unknowingly walked into the final act. The conversation happened on a Tuesday evening. I remember because I'd just stepped out of the shower, hair still damp, wrapped in a towel, when my father called my name from the living room. His tone was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that always meant a decision had already been made without me. "Haley, come sit down. We need to talk." Clara was at the counter peeling fruit, her movements slow and deliberate, like she wasn't nervous at all. Like this was something she'd practiced in her head. The moment I sat down, my stomach tightened. "We wanted to talk about Violet's wedding," Clara began, smiling softly. There it was. She talked the way people do when they already assume you'll say yes. Gentle, reasonable, framing it like a shared concern. "Things are a little tight for the family right now," she continued. "And since you've already saved up some money for a house, we were hoping you could lend us that amount." She said lend carefully, as if the word itself was proof of good intentions. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. That's when I realized something that made my chest feel hollow. She knew exactly how much I had saved, my father had told her. The dream I'd shared quietly over coffee, the condo, the timeline, the money, it hadn't been dismissed. It had been redirected. My father cleared his throat. "You already have the money, Haley, and Violet's only getting married once. That condo, it can wait, right?" There it was, the familiar phrase. "It can wait." Clara nodded sympathetically. "You don't really have major expenses. And your sister has been dreaming about her wedding since she was a little girl." As if that settled it. Then Violet walked in. She didn't ask. She didn't hesitate. She simply handed me her tablet. "I want the wedding at Woodridge Estate," she said brightly. "Crystal Garden Hall, by the lake. White and green theme. It's perfect." I looked at the screen. Base package, $42,000. Not including decor. Not including drinks. Not including the outdoor reception or live band. I looked up. If we can't afford it, why choose this place? The room went quiet. Violet's smile vanished. Clara's tone sharpened just slightly. "Some things can't be measured in dollars," she said. "You're her sister. This isn't the time to make her feel guilty." My father nodded. "If you're already keeping score with family, how are you going to survive on your own?" I didn't argue. I just asked for time. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I knew exactly what would happen if I didn't protect myself. So when I transferred the $120,000 the next day, I did something I'd never done before. I put it in writing, and I prepared for the moment they would pretend they never promised anything at all. Stop. Continue part 4. Broken promises. Violet's wedding looked exactly like the photos she'd saved. Woodridge Estate glowed under the afternoon sun. White roses lined the aisle. Soft music drifted across the lake. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, cameras flashed. From the outside, it was perfect. From where I sat, 3 rows off to the side, it felt like watching a movie I'd unknowingly funded but never been invited to star in. No one asked me to help. No one called me over for photos. No speeches mentioned me. And I told myself that was fine. I wasn't there for recognition. I was there for one reason only, to see whether they would keep their word. 2 weeks after the wedding, once the last thank you cards had gone out and the decorations were packed away, I sent Clara a short message. "Mom, I need the money back by the 15th as we agreed. I need to move forward with the home deposit." I sent it at 10 a.m. No reply. I waited a full day, then another. On the 3rd day, I called my father. "What is it, Haley?" he answered, annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. "I just wanted to remind you about the repayment date," I said carefully. He didn't let me finish. "You're still talking about that?" His voice turned sharp. You're really asking to be paid back for helping your sister's wedding? The words landed harder than I expected, not because they were new, but because they were familiar. The same tone he'd used every time I'd ever asked for fairness. That night, Violet texted me, "You're unbelievable, asking for money back after your sister's wedding." I stared at the message for a long time. Something inside me went quiet. Not angry, not hurt, just closed. 3 days before the deadline, I asked my dad to meet for coffee. Then again, no response. On Wednesday evening, I went anyway. I waited alone for over an hour. No one came. That night, back at the house, everyone was home. The TV murmured in the background. Clara peeled an apple. My father read the paper. Violet sat on the couch beside her husband, laughing at her phone. I stood in the doorway. "I invited you to talk about the wedding money," I said evenly. No one showed up. My father didn't look up. "Didn't realize small stuff needed a meeting." Clara laughed softly. "You've got a good job, Haley. Why make such a big deal out of it?" I took a breath, because there was an agreement. My father slammed the paper down. "You've lived here rent-free your whole life, and now you're acting like we owe you something?" Violet scoffed. "If you want fairness so badly, move out." Her husband chuckled. "This is wild." I didn't respond, because my phone, tucked inside my coat pocket, had been recording since I walked in. When Clara finally snapped, when she said the words that ended everything, "I told you we're not paying it back. That money was for your sister. It's a family matter. What do you want? Are you going to sue your mother?" I already knew this was no longer a conversation. It was evidence, and I had exactly what I needed. The next morning, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the argument in my head. Didn't draft angry messages I'd never send. I moved through my routine like everything was normal. Shower, coffee, commute. Except there was a strange clarity sitting in my chest. Like a door had finally closed. At 10:30 a.m., I walked into the office of Alan Whitaker, a civil attorney in Bellevue. The building was old red brick, the kind that smelled faintly of paper and dust. His office was small, quiet, and deliberately uninviting to drama, which was exactly what I needed. I handed him a folder. Inside were the bank transfer receipt, printed screenshots of Clara's messages confirming repayment, and a USB drive. He didn't interrupt while I explained. He didn't react when I told him they were my family. He simply listened, nodding occasionally, flipping pages slowly. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said one sentence. "We can proceed." That afternoon, the demand letter went out. Formal, precise, no emotion. When Clara called me the next morning, her voice shook, not with regret, but with outrage. "How could you do this to us?" she said. "Sending lawyers after family. You've embarrassed me." I kept my voice steady. "I told you from the beginning, this wasn't a gift." Silence. Then the line went dead. I moved out 2 days later. I didn't announce it, didn't argue, didn't explain. Everything I owned fit into 4 boxes and 2 suitcases. Before I left, I placed a white envelope on the nightstand in my old room. Inside were copies of the transfer, the written agreement, and the lawyer's letter. On the front, I wrote one sentence. "This was a loan, I never forgot." A week later, their attorney responded. They claimed it was family support, that no agreement existed, that I was misunderstanding generosity. I read the letter once. Then I texted Alan 2 words. "File it." The lawsuit moved faster than I expected. Evidence didn't argue. Documents didn't feel guilty. Audio recordings didn't forget promises. 3 weeks later, the ruling came down. Full repayment, plus legal fees. I wasn't in the courtroom when it happened. I was at work, staring at my inbox, when Alan messaged me. We won. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. 14 days after the judgment, on an otherwise ordinary morning, my phone buzzed while I was standing in line at a coffee shop. Plus $134,000. No message, no sender, no explanation. Just a number sitting quietly on my screen. For a long moment, I didn't move. Not because I was shocked, but because I realized I wasn't waiting for anything else anymore. No apology, no call, no attempt to explain themselves. The money came back the same way it was taken, silently. 2 days later, I went to the bank and transferred the entire amount into the account I'd set aside years ago for my future, the one that had survived being delayed, redirected, and nearly erased. That same afternoon, I signed the purchase contract for my condo at Willow Creek. I didn't bring anyone with me. No father to frown thoughtfully. No stepmother to offer calculated concern. No sister to weigh in on what she deserved more. I signed alone. And when the agent slid the keys across the desk, something in my chest finally loosened. A week later, I moved in. The apartment wasn't grand. 2 bedrooms, laminate floors, a kitchen that caught the morning light just right. Quiet. Mine. No one from my family reached out. No congratulations, no anger, no final words. Just absence. And for the first time, absence didn't feel like rejection. It felt like relief. I used to believe forgiveness meant enduring anything in the name of family. That love required silence. That being the good daughter meant swallowing unfairness until it felt normal. Now I understand something different. Boundaries aren't betrayal. Fairness isn't cruelty. And walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you chose yourself. If my family ever tells this story, I know how it will sound. The daughter who took her parents to court. The sister who cared more about money than blood. I won't correct them, because the truth doesn't need defending anymore. And if you've listened this far, I want to ask you, if you were in my place, would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? Or would you have spoken up, even knowing it might cost you everything? Sometimes justice is the only way to stop being a shadow.